Hi, welcome to Women Created and Called Live. I am back after a little break over the holidays and the new year. We are back and ready for a new year. And it's really exciting, isn't it? Are you excited? I'm excited. I'm getting more and more excited by the day, literally. And today, I want to talk to you about how it's possible to be 100% all in on faith, family, and business. How do we do that without one of them suffering or more? How do we go all in all the time? I'm here to tell you it is possible. So we're going to talk about that today. But before I get to that, like I said, I took a little break over the holidays. And it has been amazing. I actually had a chance to go to Italy with my husband. It was just the two of us. That was my first time in Europe. So I had an opportunity to tour some of the amazing cathedrals. And of course, we did visit the Vatican, and I had some really beautiful moments looking at the beauty that was around me. And I will be sharing some of those reflections coming up in the near future. But Christmas was interesting because we were supposed to travel to go see my family, and we were driving. And the day that was the only day that we could travel, there was a huge snowstorm. And so, like probably many of you, our Christmas plans got foiled a little bit and we ended up staying home. So, but I was so grateful for it because we actually had a pretty low-key Christmas. It was just us. And we were able to just really enjoy each other's company. And we watched lots of Christmas movies because we love them. I love them. And it was great. And the new year is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because there can be so much pressure, at least I've noticed in my life. I notice a lot of pressure around, okay, what are you going to do for the new year? What are you, get your goals set before January 1st? And what are you going to create this year? And all of this. And while I love all of that, I think it's so important to think about the year ahead. And it's not about setting resolutions because, as we all know from research, resolutions don't last, right? But when we set intentional goals, and we create a plan to actually put those goals into action, and we learn how to take committed action, how to stay committed to those so that we actually follow through with them. All of that is incredibly valuable. But I don't like the pressure that can come along with that. So what I did this year is I really gave myself permission to let go of the pressure. Because really, January 1st is just a date on the calendar, right? It's just a date. So what? So I am still in the process of, I have my goals pretty much figured out for the first quarter. And I did some dreaming, which was wonderful. And thinking about, things with no deadline, no timeline in mind. Other things that I would like to create sometime during this year. And then I narrowed it down to the first quarter. And I'm still in the process of getting clear about what it will take to create each of those things and to reach those goals. So anyway, my point is, if you are like me and you didn't have it done by January 1st, I want to just encourage you to give yourself permission to not beat yourself up about that. It's not a big deal. Seriously, it isn't. However, do give yourself permission to dream. And if you haven't yet, write some things down. If you've been following me for a little bit, you know that I say constantly, write it down, right? So yes, do some journaling about it and just let yourself dream. It is so valuable, and so many of us have forgotten how to do that. So please do that. Anyway, in all of this dreaming, there was, okay, I'm going to get really honest here, okay? There was a lot of resistance for me because of thoughts. As you know, our thoughts lead to feelings, and those thoughts and feelings lead to certain actions, right? If you have been following me for a little bit, then you know about that cycle. And so I had thoughts about whether I wanted to record an episode today. And I noticed so much resistance. But I took it to prayer, a whole lot of prayer, and I did some self-coaching, and I was coaching myself around those thoughts and thinking about, what am I thinking here? What am I thinking that is leading to that feeling of resistance? And what could I choose to think instead to help me have feelings that will compel me to record that episode? And honestly, as I find usually happens, that change in thought happened in prayer. Literally this morning. And one of the thoughts that I had around this episode was, I don't know what to say. Even though I knew that I actually did know what to say. I have a lot to say. I have, every time I have a thought about something I might like to share with you, I put it down in a note in my phone. I love Google Keep. So I put it in there. And so the truth is that I have lots of things that I could share with you. I do know what to say. And yet I was having that thought. Sometimes our brains like to actually lie to us, really, because it feels more comfortable and more safe. It's okay. But I had that thought, and this morning, at some point during my prayer time, and I don't even know, I was listening to, I think it was when I was listening to a prayer reflection that we were doing to pray for the soul of Pope Benedict XVI. And I don't even know if it was something specific that was said in this excerpt from one of his encyclicals, but I suddenly had the thought, I must go and record this episode today. I must. No matter how messy it is, no matter if I feel prepared or not, you know, the Holy Spirit shows up and gives us the words to say when we invite him in and invite him to do that. And so at some point, my point is that at some point my thought shifted, and I knew that I had to come on here and share some of my thoughts with you today. So, like I said, today we're going to talk about the possibility of 100% all in on faith, family, and business. Now, you may have heard of the concept of, I'm sure you have, of work-life balance. And you may have also heard someone say that that is a myth. I think there's actually a book, The Work-Life Balance Myth, might be the title of that book, if I remember correctly. And I would agree with that, because balance implies and creates the necessity for equilibrium, I guess is the word. So things would have to be equal all at the same time in order to create a balance. So this is not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about 100% all in on faith, on family, and in business. What I am talking about is bringing it down to, it's, what is the word I'm trying to think of here? It's a micro way to look at it, and distilling it down to the moments. If you are 100% all in on that moment, then you have planned for that moment. There's a lot of intentional planning and setting yourself up for success in those moments that's involved. But if you can bring it down to being fully present, 100% all in on the moments when you intentionally have set this time is for this task. This time is to be fully with these people. This time is to be fully present in my prayer, in my intimate time with God. When we do that, 100% all in is possible. So I am going to give you some details of the practicality of that very soon here. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the virtue of hope, because when we talk about possibility, we got to talk about hope. Because here's something, a thought that came to me. Now, I am not an expert. I'm not a theologian. I'm not, I don't call myself an expert in this area. However, this thought came to me in prayer this morning as I was thinking about possibility and hope. So here you go. Take and do with it what you will. Here it is. When possibility is infused with God's grace, it becomes oriented toward eternal life with God in heaven. Possibility then is elevated to the theological virtue of hope. So it might start with possibility. And in a lot of secular circles, we might hear conversation about living in possibility, right? Well, when we add God's grace into that, then it becomes hope. And it's powerful, and it, again, is a theological virtue. And that virtue of hope is essential for faith. Now, here is what it says about faith in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says, faith is the realization of what is hoped for and evidence of things not seen. And so hope creates an attitude, or a lens, if you will, or as I like to call it, a default mode of possibility. And then we have come full circle. So possibility, when you add God's grace to it, take note of that. That is the key ingredient here. This is what changes that possibility into a virtue. Okay, so we start with possibility, we add God's grace into it, and it becomes hope. And then when we have that hope and we're looking at life through that lens, then we create a default of looking at the world as full of possibility. So, like I said, we've come full circle. So today, like I said, let's talk specifically about the possibility of 100% all in on faith, family, and business. Now, there was a time when I was not all in on these things. And I was more in that, like I was describing earlier about balance. I would want balance, but I wasn't achieving that either. What was happening is that I would have a tendency to focus on one area of my life and all these other areas would suffer. So for example, when I first started going as an entrepreneur and I started a blog back in 2019, that first year, and yes, it was 2020 and it was messy and it was crazy. And that first year, I became very focused on that, and my family suffered. I became disconnected from them. And, I kept telling myself, I am doing this because God called me to do it, which was true. I had a very profound experience. I did lean into prayer very much. And I had an experience of discernment early in that year that led me to believe that this is what God was calling me to. And I was shocked that he wanted me to start a blog because I barely knew what that was. But that is where he was leading me. Now, looking back on it, I know that that was a little stepping stone to help me learn to trust him completely. And I continue to practice that and try to grow in that trust. But that was a huge shift for me at that time. But my point is, even though I was leaning into prayer and it led me to business and the work that I do, my family was feeling like I was very disconnected from them. And that's my story, and that's where I'm coming from. And now I know, I have learned that it is possible to be 100% all in on all of the things that matter to you in your life. Like I said at the beginning, the secret is to distill it down to your schedule and those moments. Can you be 100% all in on the moments? Because when we do that, then we see God's grace in those moments, and that is how we will live the fullest life. When we see God's grace in the everyday moments of our lives. So for me, what does that look like? What does 100% all in look like for me? It means, and you can define it how you want for your life. What does 100% all in look like for you? And here's what it is for me. It means that whatever circumstance God has placed me in, and whatever task or environment I have chosen in that moment, I am there on purpose. And when I say on purpose, that means that I am, it's like saying that somebody is on task. I am on purpose. I am within my life purpose. That moment, whatever I'm doing, where the location that I am, the people that I'm with, all of those things fits within my life purpose. And that's what I mean by I am there on purpose. Okay. And it also means I have made choices to create the possibility to be fully present, both in seeking God's grace of the moment, like I just said a moment ago, and focusing outward to reflect his love by sharing my gifts with others. So let me say that piece again. It means that I have made choices that create the possibility to be fully present, both in seeking God's grace within that moment and focusing outward so that I can share, so that I can reflect his love by sharing my gifts with others. So let's get down to the practical now. In practical application, this means that it starts by choosing to encounter God so that I can discover or remember the real me. This is where it begins. It starts with understanding my identity, as in, what are the thoughts that I have about myself? What are the thoughts that I have about God? And also, what does God say about me? Because that is where I find my true identity. This is how I discover the woman that God is creating me to be. Because, have you heard that quote? Be who you are and you will set the world on fire. St. Catherine of Siena said something similar to those words that might not be the exact words, but that is the sentiment. Be who you are created to be, and you will set the world on fire. This is what compels me to record this episode today, because this is what I want. I want so much for women in this world to know who they really are so that they can be that woman and set the world on fire. And this is not to be disruptive in a bad way or setting the world on fire in a bad way. This is in the sense that Jesus said he wished it were already burning. This is setting the world on fire with God's love. This is what I want for me. This is what I want for you. This is what I want for women everywhere. And for men and children and for everybody, yes. But I have a special heart for women to just understand who God is creating them to be. So the next part in this very practical application is considering my overall life purpose. So remember how a moment ago I said, I am in those moments and I am on purpose. This is the part where you kind of know what that is. What do you think is the main overall purpose for your life? And I don't want to give the answer away because I want you to arrive at that on your own. But think big picture here. Where do you want to end up? At the end of your life, where do you want to end up? I hope that the answer is obvious to you. Then the next piece to this practical application is clarifying my priorities within that purpose and making sure that the things that I give priority to actually do line up with that purpose. Do they fit? Because if they don't, then it's time to do some rearranging and rethink what my priorities are. And this next piece is a very important step. And I mentioned it earlier, learning to dream and then taking those dreams and breaking those down into goals and tasks that occupy their deserved specific moments in my schedule. So many of us have forgotten how to dream. And I guess I already talked about that, so I won't go into that again. But man, dreaming feels fantastic. And honestly, January 1st and those couple days after, I really got intentional about just letting myself dream. And I had to let go of lots of thoughts I was having about even the way I was going about this exercise of dreaming. I was trying to get it right. I was thinking I was doing it wrong. And I would let those thoughts about how is this going to happen get in the way. And I didn't even want to write it down. And then when I was able to let go of all of that other junk, I was able to come up with a list of something like, I don't know, almost 30 different dreams that I have. And the list is still growing. Thank you for your comment, Michelle. She says, oh, deserved. Yes. How much time is spent on stuff that don't deserve or even warrant our attention? Exactly. And the way that I said that is that our tasks get to occupy their deserved specific moments in our schedule. I heard somebody say this, and I can't remember who it was. I wish I could. They said, when you have your calendar, if something else comes up and you need to do something else during that time slot and you had something else planned, then think of it like a tenant in an apartment building. In order for this other thing that has come up to occupy that spot on your calendar, then the thing that was there has to move out. You can't pile them on top of each other. That just would be really bad management of an apartment building, wouldn't it? If you were trying to move in, multiple families into a tiny apartment, it would not work. So those items have to find another spot in your calendar, and you get to do some rearranging. And that's how we can make it work. So, yes, dreaming. Okay, the next piece to this practical application of how we can be 100% all in is committing to follow through with exercises to cultivate a healthy mindset. Now, I would like to say that, oh, here's just another important piece. No, this is the most important piece. And here's why. As I have alluded to this through this whole episode, our thoughts are what create the actions in the end, and in the end create the results in our lives, right? It begins with our thoughts. So if we want to get to the follow through part, then we got to make sure that we are having and practicing is a key word here. We are practicing the very best thoughts because that will help us arrive at the very best results. Now, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about this cycle. I've heard some people call it, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. The Life Coach School calls it the model. Metanoia Catholic calls it the thought trajectory model. I found another coach who calls it the creation cycle, which is really cool. I love that name. But this cycle of the way that our thoughts lead to actions and results, and then those results become our circumstances, which is so interesting. That's another topic. As I was thinking about this, I thought, okay, so if we want to have, I had a call coming in. If we want to come up with the best results, then we got to start with the best thoughts. Now, where do the best thoughts come from? Oh, thank you, Michelle. Metanoia Catholic has now changed their name to the Reason Cycle. I thought that might be true, but I hadn't investigated it, and so I didn't want to say it. But yes, I love that name too. That is fantastic. Okay, so if we want to have the best results, then we need to start with the best thoughts. So, where do the best thoughts come from? The best thoughts come from truth. Where can we find truth? And then I just went through this process of reverse engineering that to come up with how can we create the best thoughts in our lives. And it comes from, if we trace it back, it comes from first our thoughts about God. And then from that, our thoughts about ourselves, and then the thoughts about what God says about us. And all of these things are wrapped up in our identity. So if we're going to come up with the best results in our lives, it starts with knowing the real you, knowing the you that God created you to be, and that God is still working on you in every moment of every day. His grace is available and adds. Here's the equation that I often say. It's what God started with you, all of the gifts and talents and all of the things that he put in you when you were created. And then add to that his grace available in every moment of every day. The key there is learning how to look for that grace and being ready to receive it. And when you put those two things together, that equals everything that you need in every moment of every day to do his will. That's the key too. You have exactly what you need to do his will. So, the results in your life, do they match with God's will? That's something to ask yourself. Okay, so this is what 100% all in looks like. Can you see I'm getting a little fired up about this? I have been thinking about this for so long, and I'm finally putting it into words, and I'm finally sharing it with you. And I got to tell you, that feels so good. Because like I said, if we do this is how we can light the world on fire, ladies. And you know what? Here's the truth. It is possible for you. And the people in your life, all the people that you love, they deserve the real you. Not some watered down, overworked, overwhelmed, distracted, and exhausted version of you. They deserve the version of you that is 100% all in on your life, especially all in on your faith and your family and the work that you do to contribute to the world. The mama who is all in on all of the memory-making moments so that she can hold them and treasure them and ponder them in her heart. Does that sound familiar? That was in our readings just a few days ago. This is what Mary did with all of the moments that she experienced with her family. She pondered them in her heart. But guess what? If we are exhausted and distracted and not showing up to those moments as the woman that God created us to be, it's going to be really hard to remember those moments because we will have our mind on other things and we will not be able to hold them and treasure them and ponder them in our hearts. This is the woman that God created you to be and calls you to be. So, are you ready to say yes to his invitation? He's inviting you. If this is something that you are like, yes, it's exactly what I've been wanting and waiting for, I want to share with you that this is just a little hint of all that you can gain from coaching with me. So if that is something that you want to talk about, just leave a comment, send me a private message on social media, or drop me an email at Beth@womencreatedandcalled.com. And I will see you next week. And I am so excited to share more with you about how this is possible for you and all of the little pieces that go into it. And until then, I just pray that you are starting out your new year lit up and on fire. I hope that you can feel it in your bones how much is possible for you. What would happen if we have a default mode of possibility? That is something that I am working on in my own life, and I hope that you will join me. And until I see you next week, God bless you and all those that you love. Bye.